You know what I love? Evangelion. I think what has always drawn me to the show is the ridiculous precision with which it is edited. Something about it so accurately captures the human experience. It portrays the intricacies of pain, the synapses that fire off in your brain that shoot an image into our mind. It captures that voice that can linger in your brain, that brings up the most uncomfortable images and ideas. It does an insanely good job at humanizing the characters and only bringing you closer and closer to them. Their feelings and thoughts and consciousness feel so fleshed out because the editing almost gives you this fourth dimension for you to peek in and really see what they are experiencing. It's such an important aspect because Evangelion is trying to tell this huge story with really abstract ideas that I think only really works if you can connect with the characters. It's what made me fall in love with the show and take it into my life not just as an art piece, but as something that is a genuine piece of psychological support. It represents more to me than just a story, but also as a symbol of self-love and care. Its earnesty with which it captured the human experience made me feel heard in ways that I hadn't ever felt before. It helped me understand myself better. I made a whole dang homage to it. But look, you get it, we get it. I like Evangelion. But you see, what has always connected me to hip-hop is good sampling. I love seeing producers manipulate and specify and customize and build around whatever samples they use. It's such an art form in and of itself, especially as hip-hop has only continued to grow and the amount of working producers has only increased. There's less and less pieces that haven't been sampled before, so it demands innovation. Some of my favorite producers, Earl Sweatshirt, Cities of Eve, SEFU, Dilla. These guys do such interesting things with what they sample and how they produce around it. They find these unique ways to tilt and alter the loops they're working with to imbue them with even more emotion and style. It almost gives you this extra dimension that you can see the song through. See, what makes a lot of the editing good in Evangelion is what makes these producers great at sampling, in my opinion. I think what I appreciated most about this album is how it uses speed and repetition to really add a whole new angle of emotion to it. SEFU constantly finds these ways to angle a sample to give them this new emotional context, or even morphing them into bridges that take on this completely new sound with completely new drums. It reminds me of how Evangelion does these quick little re-edits of its scenes before, sometimes just thrown in an image for a second, just to kind of give you a new interpretation and see how it feels in that character's head, give you a new context. It reminds you of a particular incident and makes you think of it differently. It gives SEFU's songs this almost kaleidoscopic effect. It's almost as if I'm looking through the producer's ears and eyes, and I'm able to soak in the music through their experience, giving me all these particular weird little angles that only add to the overall theme and emotion of the album. Cities of Eve is probably my favorite producer currently working. First of all, his ability to find and transform samples is incredible. But what I think he does best is create something grand and alive. He so often inserts these fun, almost disconcerting chops into his samples. The production is so alive and unstable and emotional. It has a real dreaminess to it as well. He kind of uses reverb and other effects to give the samples this real crunchiness and almost make it feel fantastical. It reminds me of some of the psychological sequences in Evangelion and even the movie. It's exploring the thoughts and ideas and emotions that are deep inside our conscious, kind of obstructed by the volatility of our mind's eye. How we see things inside there is so different, and so it demands a more abstract image and sound. In my opinion, Earl was at his absolute best with this album. It gives us insight into what's going on inside Earl's head and how it really feels to be him. He depicts the absolute mess that mental health struggles can be, just how claustrophobic it can feel, bouncing between the fear and sadness that have just built up inside your head. The production finds ways to communicate that horrible convulsion through how he twists the samples. Everything sounds so disjointed and uncomfortable. It also has just like this aching sadness to it. Evangelion's editing genuinely gave me more insight into the characters and what they were feeling. Earl's ultimately able to do the same by twisting and distorting these samples and giving us this new angle to really see how these emotions affect him. I couldn't talk about good sampling without talking about Dilla. I love donuts. The samples and how Dilla manipulates them is fantastic. The folk story with this album is that when JD was producing it, he was essentially on his deathbed, and that most of it had gotten completed during his stays in the hospital. In reality, most of the project had been completed when late in the production process he was diagnosed with lupus. There's these sad descriptions of Jay's mother massaging his hands after they would swell up so he could get back to work. How there would be times where he would wake up in the middle of the night and ask his mom to move him to his instruments. It's a really interesting background, and it gives the album a somewhat haunting feeling, especially given he only died 3 days after it released. There's this underlying tone of sadness and impending death that just seeps throughout the sampling and production. Songs like Don't Cry, Hi, Stop, they all have this palpable emotion to them that is inherent to the production choices J Dilla made. J Dilla said that most of the beats were ones that he thought were a little too much for MCs. I feel like that's such an apt description of what actually makes this album really great. There's so much going on in just the production and sampling that it doesn't even need vocals. Something about it is just so perfect on its own. J Dilla's soul literally feels bonded to this work. It feels like you can really truly hear him without ever even hearing his voice. To me, ultimately, that's what all these things have in common and what I love about all of them. Evangelion's editing and these producers are extremely precise, and they use editing and cuts and chops and repeats and reinterpretations to tell a story and give it further context. It's a sort of subtle storytelling that is just so goddamn good and imbues their work with such personality and style and rewatchability / re-listenability. It gave me such valuable insight into the emotion and themes of the works that it's used in, and I think it's just such a great tool that really can be used across so many mediums. But no, I actually hate all this shit, and I just want to watch shows like House MD, but my friend Jordan Driver won't let me. So if you guys have a problem, go to the George channel and comment on his videos, because that's the reason I can't watch House MD. And that, if you go and comment, I will start making House MD videos.